Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a really powerful tool for software developers called Entity Framework Core, or as pretty much everyone calls it, EF Core. It's all about making one of the most common and, let's be honest, often repetitive parts of programming so much better. I'm talking about accessing a database. EF Core makes it faster, easier, and just way more intuitive.
But to really get what EF Core is, we first have to talk about the problem it was designed to solve. And it starts with a great story from John P. Smith, the author of our source material. See, he was a software architect, building these really complex applications, and he kept hitting the same frustrating wall over and over again.
I think any developer can feel this one. He found himself just writing the same kind of tedious, mind-numbing database code again and again. You know the drill. Fetch some data, convert it, update it. It's that kind of work that just eats up your time and gets in the way of solving the real, interesting, creative problems.
Well, all that frustration led to a light bulb moment, a sudden realization that there had to be a better, more efficient way to work with data. He realized this whole repetitive dance of moving data back and forth was a universal problem that could, and really should, be automated.
So he asked himself that classic question, what if? What if a tool could just automate most of this stuff? What if developers could be freed up to focus on the things that actually mattered, creativity, problem solving, instead of just, being data plumbers? This is the core question that Entity Framework Core was built to answer.
And that brings us right to the solution, Entity Framework Core. So at its heart, EF Core is what's known as an Object Relational Mapper, or an OORM. Now I know that sounds super technical, but the idea behind it is actually incredibly simple.
Just think of it like a translator, a really, really good one. It helps two very different worlds speak the same language. It literally builds a bridge between how your software thinks and how your database thinks, and it completely automates all that boring, repetitive data conversion we were just talking about.
So on one side, you have your application's code. It thinks in terms of objects and classes, like a book object that has a title and an author. But on the other side, you've got your database. It organizes all that same information into tables and rows and columns. And here's the thing. These two worlds, they just don't naturally understand each other at all.
And this is where the magic of EF Core really comes in. It elegantly maps the concepts from the database world directly to your software world. A database table, that just becomes a C# class. The columns in that table, they become properties on your class. Even the whole SQL language used to query the database gets mapped to something developers already know called LINQ. It just bridges that gap seamlessly.
Okay, so how does this translation actually work in the real world? It's one thing to talk about the theory, but it's another thing to actually see it in action. So let's look at a real example and see how this all comes together.
A typical database query using EF Core basically has three simple parts. First, you get to your database through this kind of gateway object. Then you write a command in C#, not SQL, to describe the data you're looking for. And finally, you just tell EF Core to run it, and that's when all the magic translation and data fetching happens.
Now, what's so amazing here is that you're looking at C# code. That's it. There's no SQL in sight. But behind the scenes, EF Core takes this one little line and translates it into a super efficient SQL query to find all the books in your books table where the title starts with the word quantum. The developer doesn't have to write one single word of SQL. It's awesome.
This powerful translation brings some massive benefits with it, and it goes way beyond just saving a developer from writing a few lines of SQL. So why does this matter so much to developers and to businesses? Well, the impact is huge.
And this really shows the key takeaways, right? EF Core allows for super rapid development because it automates so much of that tedious work. It's multi-platform, so you can build an app that runs literally anywhere. It's fast since it's part of the high-performance.NET ecosystem. And it's built on this modern, open-source foundation with really strong backing from Microsoft. But like any powerful tool, it's not a silver bullet. It's not going to solve every problem you have. So it's important to understand the bigger picture, including some of the challenges that come with this approach, and, of course, where the technology is headed next. So one of the challenges has this really fancy name, impedance mismatch. All it really means is that the object world and the relational database world are fundamentally different. And sometimes, even a great translator like EF Core can't perfectly resolve those differences. It's just something developers need to be aware of when they're designing their systems.
And looking ahead, the really cool thing is that EF Core isn't just for those traditional relational databases anymore. It's evolving. It's now working with modern NoSQL databases like Azure's Cosmos DB. This makes it an incredibly versatile tool that can adapt as the world of data continues to change.
So we'll end with this thought, which brings us right back to that original light bulb moment. When you take away all that tedious, repetitive work of just accessing data, what new possibilities, what innovations could you unlock? What more complex, more interesting problems could you finally have the time to solve? And that, right there, is the real promise of Entity Framework Core.